Dear Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, this is Rudra Narayan Das. It's a true pleasure for me to welcome you to this World Human Sciences and Management Conference 2021, organized by Center for Adivasi Research and Development, Odisha, in association with Indian Institute of Management, Sambalpur, and Central University of Odisha, Koraput. Dear friends, the broader theme of this conference is agricultural context, disciplinary practices of social sciences, and policy frames. On behalf of Center for Adivasi Research and Development, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to Professor Mahadev Joysar, Director IIM Sambalpur, and Professor I. Ram Brahma, respected Vice Chancellor, Central University of Koraput, and Professor S.K. Palita, Dean Biodiversity, Central University of Koraput, for their mesmerizing support and guidance. Friends, the convener of this August conference is a eminent historian, Professor Chandi Prasad Nanda, and eminent policy activist, writer, and philanthropist, Mr. Charudatta Panigrahi. Friends, this evening is going to very mesmerizing and thought-provoking for all of us, because we have with us Dr. Narayan Krishnaswamy. Dr. Narayan is working as a dean in R&D, professor and head Department of Electronics and Communication Engineering at Sai Vidya Institute of Technology, Bangalore. He did doctorate from prestigious Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, in the year of 2012. His research interests include photonics and integrated optics applicants and lab on a chip sensor system. Also, Professor Narayan is the recipient of prestigious startup research grant for young scientists under Science and Engineering Research, BROAD, DST, SERB, Government of India for FY 15-16, and SEED, Money to Young Scientists for Research, SMYSR, by Vision Group of Science and Technology, Department of IT and PT and S&T, Government of Karnataka for FY 15 and 16. He has been instrumental in guiding and motivating students to conduct research and oriented projects in the area of photonics and presenting the work in top international conferences held abroad. Under his guidance, 15 UG students have presented their work. 15 UG students have presented their papers in international conference proceedings held abroad in United States of America, Portugal, Czech Republic, and Macau, China. Students have received international and national travel grant under Professor Dr. Narayan K's supervision. Also, 2 UG students have received $4,000 to travel grant and IEEE Photonics Society. Apart from the technical activities, he is extremely student friendly, like to always interact with students, a good motivational speaker, and he have also conducted personality development classes for the students for improving the personality communication skill apart from career counseling. We are kind-heartedly welcome you, sir. This is very important to have you in this global intellectual forum. Sir, the minimum agenda of CARD is to promote language, culture, and nature of our country, and we have to be going to making a platform of research-based higher education in our country. So in this present scenario, we are very happy to have you in our conference. Professor Dr. Narayan is going to speak on challenges in higher education and technical education due to COVID-19. Over to you, Professor Narayan.
Thank you so much, Professor Rudra Narayan Das. So I will be sharing my presentation. I hope you can see my presentation and it is visible to all.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So thank you, Professor Rudra Narayan Das, for a wonderful introduction. Thank you so much. And I thank the CARD for inviting me to deliver a talk in this prestigious conference and at this forum. So today I'll be talking about challenges in higher and technical education due to COVID-19. As Professor Rudra Narayan Das already introduced me, I am working as Dean R&D at Sai Vidya Institute of Technology. I'm a life member of IEEE HKN, which is an IEEE Honor Society of Indian Institute of Science, and senior member of IEEE. And this presentation is given to Center for Adivasi Research and Development, organized by CARD and in association with IIM Sambalpur. Today is the date. So just one disclaimer before I start my presentation. The views I express in this presentation are of my personal opinion, not to the link to the institution that I'm representing. So I won't go back to my introduction that is already introduced. These are my research profiles. If you're interested, I can share the presentation link. Okay. Just coming to the higher education sector in India as a whole. First, I'll just give you an introduction about the higher education sector. In India, the higher education is governed by University Grants Commission. Technical education is governed by All India Council of Technical Education. Now, as per the new education policy, there will be a higher education council which is likely to be formed, which will amalgamate or merge UGC and AICTE. But as of today, higher education as a whole is governed by University Grants Commission and technical education by AICTE. And with respect to technical education, there is one more thing. If it is a university or an autonomous institution, university status will be given by University Grants Commission, and the technical education content will be covered by AICTE. So there are basically two governing bodies insofar as technical education is concerned, and science and higher education is solely governed by UGC. I hope with this we'll go forward. Another point I would like to make is top institutions in India, that is Indian Institute of Science, IITs, NITs, and IIITs. They are neither governed by AICTE nor UGC, and they are totally autonomous, and many of them appear in the world ranking. We are very honored to have such institutions in our country. For example, Indian Institute of Science is #1 research institution in the globe insofar as research is concerned, and many of the IITs appear in the global ranking. But unfortunately, this kind of quality is not yet visible in many of the Indian institutions, other Indian universities and institutions where we are really lacking. So this COVID-19 has impacted this higher education in a very major way. None of the policy researchers could have forecasted such a pandemic and how it is going to affect an education as a whole. That is what will be the main concentration of this talk. Apart from these governing bodies of AICTE and University Grants Commission, which modulate the quality of the technical education and control and give guidelines on the education in India. Quality control, we have another two organizations, namely National Board of Accreditation, NBA, and NAC, so National Accreditation Council, and NBA. Again, these two are two different accrediting agencies. NBA accredits the program in specific. For example, in our institution, we have electronics and communication engineering. That program is accredited by NBA, and NAC will accredit the institution as a whole. NAC is also there for the science institutions. So as we see in the first slide, normal higher education in India, especially technical education, you have 4 different organizations which are involving, namely University Grants Commission, AICTE, NBA, NAC. So when we are having 4 different organizations, especially trying to control and give guidelines to the quality of education, it can have some kind of confusion. So that is why the government of India very rightly have introduced higher education policy, in this higher education policy, there will be a single governing council for governing all the higher education, including technical education. So technical education is not going to be a standalone education system or standalone governing body. You are not going to have for technical education. On the other hand, you will have a single governing body for science, technical, arts, everything. And in fact, many of the humanities subjects are likely to be introduced for engineering education, which is the one of the proposals by Higher Education Council. And this NBA and NAC are going to be integrated, and quality control will be taken over likely by IITs, where they will give the quality control guidelines, and the normal academic guidelines will be given by Higher Education Council. So this is the proposal on the new education policy. If any of you would have read it, I think you will be able to appreciate what I'm trying to tell you. Other top institutions will continue to remain as autonomous. So this is the general introduction about the higher education scenario in India. Right now, we have too many governing bodies trying to do the same work, which will be replaced by Higher Education Council shortly. Now, another important aspect I will touch upon before going to COVID-19 as such is there has been a general lack of decline in the quality of engineering and higher education in India. In specific, I'm talking about engineering graduates. As per the survey done by industries who are the main recruiters of engineering graduates, because most of these engineering graduates join the professional education from the employability aspect point of view, and they expected to be employed immediately after graduation. That is the whole point in joining for a professional course like engineering. Unlike science, many of them are not interested in research and higher education. Most of them take a Bachelor of Engineering BE to take care of their employability portion. Now, what has happening, especially from the last 5 to 6 years, is there has been a boom in engineering education, and there have been numerous colleges which have propped up in various parts of India, especially in South India. We have a situation in Tamil Nadu where we have more than 700 engineering colleges in Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu, and many of them could not deliver quality. And 80% of the students who are passing out from such institutions were not employable by the industry. So what are the reasons is basically the quality is the thing which I'm trying to highlight here. They have inadequate understanding of the basic concept. Do the students have inadequate understanding of the basic concept? They have lack of training in the latest skills which are required to be employable, and general lack of motivation. Now, this is what I have been finding in, especially I am in this engineering education from the last 13 years. Students nowadays lack motivation, and they are highly demotivated lot. Unfortunately, this is the truth. Their motivation level seems to be very low. When the students' motivation levels are very low and they don't have an urge to achieve something in life, the end result is not going to be very, fruitful. So another thing which is basically lacking in the tier 2 education institutions in India are innovation, research, entrepreneurship skill. This is totally lacking. So as you know, as per our Honorable Prime Minister's vision, we have to be Atmanirbhar Bharat. See, as you know, many things have been imported from abroad at a very astronomical cost. If these are manufactured in India, the amount of money or capital we are going to save, we can impart education to the very basic level of very basic primary education we have to strengthen in India. See, as you know, India has a vast network of villages where in villages, the primary education need to be strengthened, and this is what the Prime Minister and the education ministers have been harping upon. Strengthening primary education is the foremost thing which will make India Atmanirbhar and make India a developed nation. Education starts from primary education. Anyway, in my talk, I'll be highlighting on higher education. But the basic building block is primary education. Right from first standard onwards, you need to inculcate thinking, analytical skills among our young population. We have no dearth of talented students if they are motivated enough to serve our country in the field of engineering, science, or whatever field they take. I am sure India can become a developed nation and give leadership to the world in terms of education. So innovation research is totally inadequate. So it starts right from basic education. So from there, you have to groom students. Why they need to study a subject, what is the importance of subject. Even history lessons can be made more interesting. Why we need to study history? In fact, engineers need to study history. History teaches us so many things. That's why in the higher education policy, humanities has been introduced. So basically, quality is what I am harping upon, and this should be taken care. And unfortunately, many institutions have gone out of the track, and employability has become a big concern for engineering graduates. And many students join engineering or professional education just because their parents have told, or their peers, or their brothers, sisters, or immediate family members have asked them to join engineering. This is a very, very sad truth in a country like ours. So their motivation level in general is very low when they are joining. So on top of it, if they do not get adequate placements, what happens is more demotivation. Faculty are demotivated, students are demotivated, parents in general will become demotivated. So this is the irony. So here the students are forced to do what their parents want them to do. This is another problem which is getting us into trouble. So I hope higher education policy will address all these things. Okay, so as I told you, all this I have already little bit highlighted upon is general decline in the students taking admission in the core engineering branches. Now, as I told you, there is a lack of employable opportunities, especially for technical education, which I specialize on. So the core engineering branches, civil, mechanical, electrical, are losing interest, and they are being closed down in many institutions. It's a very sad part. Okay, so I will quote. I come from Bangalore, state of Karnataka, where we have a very eminent scientist, Bharat Ratna, Professor C.N.R. Rao. So I have attended many lectures of Professor C.N.R. Rao. He's around 83 or 84. His energy level is better than a 16-year-old boy or a girl. This is the guarantee I can give. The kind of energy he imparts while giving talk is unparalleled for any scientist of his age. So I will quote him. Actually, he used to tell computer science engineering is not an engineering at all. Okay, so Professor C.N.R. Rao harps on basic concepts and basic sciences. Now people have forgotten basic sciences, chemistry, physics, mathematics. People have forgotten. They went to engineering. They are now forgetting basic engineering branches, electrical, mechanical, civil, which are the backbone of any engineering institution. That is being forgotten. So what is the importance given for engineering such as computer science engineering, artificial intelligence, such things? It is like instant masala dosa, or that is what we call in South India or in Maharashtra instant vada pav. So there is a demand for computer science, artificial intelligence. That is what the private sector is asking. So engineering colleges are opening computer science branches and closing down the core branches. Where are the faculties of the core branches supposed to go? I don't have any idea. So this is what is happening. So I am not against computer science engineering. I am not against artificial intelligence. These are the need of hour. But these engineering can be well amalgamated with the existing engineering branches. Not only existing engineering branches, any science graduate for that matter can be trained in artificial intelligence and machine learning so that he is competent in his field to deliver his best in his chosen field. Suppose a person is doing BSc physics, MSc physics, PhD physics. He can be trained in artificial intelligence and machine learning so that he can contribute towards research in physics using tools and the knowledge he has got by the new field. So we should look at amalgamating new technologies to the existing branches of science and engineering so that they don't die. Because science and basic science and engineering are the backbone of any scientist or any research for that matter. If you want the nation to develop on its own, we need all kinds of researchers, be it mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, scientists. Now I'll just talk upon slightly controversial topic. We have been importing fighter jets from France, Rafale, and it's a big controversy happening, and opposition is telling we are importing fighter jets by paying huge sums of money. Now, why can't that be done by Hindustan Aeronautical Limited? Are we not competent enough to make a fifth generation fighter jet? I am not telling we are incompetent. It is because of this problem which is plaguing on from years together, the end output we are seeing. So you take for Japan, for instance, you take for any advanced country, for instance, any new branches come, it doesn't mean at the cost of an existing science or an engineering branch. There is something very wrong with our education system, which is reason to blame for such messes. So finally, our nation should become developed. Development will come holistically. You cannot develop a nation by just offering one course and cutting out other courses. And this is another very important fact I want to tell you. Despite the institutions being accredited by NBA and NAAC, still the branches are being closed down. That means is the accreditation on paper and really not implementable on ground. Then what is the need of accreditation? Then what fund the accreditation was done? If they are not able to improve the intake or they are not able to provide the quality education to the students, why a branch should be closed down immediately after accreditation? So the reasons could be not investing resources in strengthening R&D, especially by private institutions. This is a very important factor which is leading to not strengthening R&D. Industry collaboration is lacking. So the countries like United States of America, Japan, any developed country for that matter, there is a very strong institute industry collaboration. For a country like Singapore, which is a very small country and it is almost 1/4 the size of the city where I live, Bangalore, it have there the teaching faculty is the most highly paid. So we have also we have lack of quality faculty that I will be harping upon later. Now coming back to our COVID-19. So this has invariably impacted almost every citizen living in this country. I think none of us who are here, including the audience, you would be knowing anyone who is not affected by COVID, at least in your immediate family, friends, or such things. You would have been affected by COVID. Okay. So top institutions such as Indian Institute of Science, IITs, IIITs, NITs were easily be able to adapt to the changes. Even some top private institutions adapted to the changes. However, the vast majority of Tier 2 engineering colleges and other institutions were severely impacted with COVID-19 as they are unprepared for this online education. See, this is something nobody expected. Nobody expected they'll sit in. If this was a scenario 2 years back, I'll be sitting in Bangalore, audience sitting in Orissa, where I'll be addressing. This was not thought about. Now it has become a reality. This is how the future is going to be. So we have to adjust with the new reality. So many of the engineering colleges and the other science institutions were severely affected by COVID-19 in terms of content delivery. So what are the problems that were faced in the online delivery? There's an absolute lack of standardization in teaching learning process in terms of online delivery. Now, everybody will accept nobody expected the COVID-19 to come. Nobody expected that they will be doing online delivery of classes, including myself, who I'm talking to you right now. I was totally against online classes. So there was absolute lack of standardization in teaching, how the teaching should be done, how the teaching learning process should continue. There's an absolute, what to say, there is no unanimity in this view. And this is more pronounced at the primary education level, especially in government schools. Students are getting less and less motivated and they are leaving out studies. One of the reasons could be lack of skilled faculty, and more importantly, and there are lack of training in taking online classes. Motivation level of students is quite less. Most importantly, we should look at the psychological aspect. Additional stress due to COVID on the students as well as faculty. Now, this nobody can deny. Everybody in their family is affected, especially in the second COVID wave, which was very horrible for our country, and many people have lost their lives and become crippled due to it. So additional stress on the students could be that their immediate family members are either admitted in hospital or having some kind of financial distress. So they are under extreme psychological stress, and we should be able to address that. See, many students who don't join my class while I'm taking online class for my subject, when I dig deep and find out either they are not interested in learning at all, or their parents are admitted with COVID, or their immediate relative is lost due to COVID-19, they have lost immediate family member and they don't seem to be doing well. Do we have a mechanism to tackle such cases? And this internet connectivity is a very major challenge faced by many students, especially in rural India. There have been many places within Karnataka, rural areas, where the students have to climb a hill to get a signal. And this was a case highlighted by many media channels, including India Today. There was a report on that, how students are being affected due to lack of connectivity. Now, how do we deal with this in a country as vast as India? Now, how do you teach practical experiments online? Suppose you are doing a chemistry experiment. Whether the teacher has to demonstrate adding the chemicals and telling that this will turn blue, and students have to just see that and understand. So there have been a real lack of touch with respect to practical sessions, especially in science and basic engineering. Immediate impact of online education. I'll be going for immediate impact, medium-term impact, long-term impact. I'll be touching on each point. Now, this evaluation has become very arbitrary and not standardized. Now, this has been a problem for some years, and I have to touch upon this. Especially in private institutions, managements are of the opinion that by giving marks to the students, they become very happy. So marks are distributed like laddus and jalebis and pani puris and whatnot. So this is a very pathetic situation. See, as teachers, we have to evaluate students. As faculty members, we have to evaluate students. You make them work hard and give marks, but unfortunately, in many institutions, this is not happening. So things have become very easy, especially for some private universities, which I don't wish to name and make my talk controversial. So they have been awarded marks without any effort. So what will students think? Life is very easy. Moment they pass out, the struggle starts. Then what they do? Blame the institution, blame the teachers, blame their parents, and blame themselves. Many of them go into psychological distress. Many of them are not able to contribute in the field in which they have learned. Many have to be employed not at their level, but do a job which does not require that level of education. So online education has accelerated this process. Just give marks arbitrarily, make students happy, done with it. Is that education? If that education, I'm sorry, as faculty members, we are not doing our duty properly, and all of us are collectively responsible. Because as faculty members, whether you are working in any private institution or any institution for the matter, as a teacher, you have to do your duty, which is not being done, unfortunately, because of fear of repercussions and unwanted attention. You don't want to be singled out. Okay, next. Lack of personal touch, no proper teacher-student interaction. So online classes, all students switch off their camera. Teacher will keep on teaching. So the student listening, not listening, nothing known. Okay, as I already mentioned, effect on student psychology. Many students face a lot of stress and many slipped into depression. Some students have become very casual. These we are having two extremes. So some students have slipped into depression. Some students have become extremely casual. So we are having two ends of the problem here. And many students have discontinued education due to lack of motivation. They are not motivated enough to do. I don't want engineering. Leave me alone. So this is the words told by some student. I'm not at all interested. Leave me alone. Is this the statement given? And many have left due to severe financial distress. Okay, so as per many figures, millions of people in India, especially the middle class and the lower middle class, have lost their only source of employment. In many cases, the sole breadwinner has died due to COVID. In a country as vast as India, where many people are still on the just come out of poverty and struggling for their ends meet, they are unable to pay the tuition fee. So should we not have a humanitarian approach towards such students? Is my question. Okay. Then from immediate impact to short-term impact. So all students are passing their exam with very good grades without examination. All of them are very happy. So we are making professional engineers without examination. So this is unheard so far prior to pandemic. Some of the above average students are very upset because now you have a student who is below average, average, above average, and outstanding. All the students, you give them 90. I'm just giving an example. One student who has not at all attended the class is below average. One student who is regularly attending the class but not understanding. A student who is regularly attending and understanding, and who is regularly attending and is outstanding. All the students, you give them 90. So what will be the impact on the outstanding student? You think what a difference it is going to make? Anyway, they are going to give above 90. You are not only spoiling the below average student by giving him 90, which he does not deserve, you are also creating some kind of interest among the above average students who can contribute to the society in a professional manner. They are not being distinguished, so there is no grading actually. So we are just giving marks for the sake of giving marks, and this is unfortunate truth. So the above average students and outstanding students are at a disadvantage according to me without examination, because there is no standardization again for giving grades. I like some person, I give him some grades, and I may be especially working in a private institution under the pressure to give grades. So those going to higher education are severely impacted. Yes, because many of the foreign countries, not only due to COVID, here without examination, if you are passing, many of the institutions abroad do not accept such practices. Okay, the medium term impact of online education, lack of understanding in basic concepts. So what will happen is we are going to create engineers who don't have any understanding of basic concepts, not that they had before. Traditional engineering branches, as I told you, electrical, mechanical, civil are worst affected from the engineering point of view. I am telling. Many engineering institutions are closing down the traditional branches in favor of computer science and related branches. So in these core branches, the faculties who are working are worst affected due to COVID-19. So it is very unfortunate in a state, one of the South Indian states of Tamil Nadu. Many of the faculties of engineering colleges were not paid or are not paid for months together. They have been doing some menial works like selling vegetables, coconuts in the road. Not only engineering faculty, even science faculty. There have been many WhatsApp videos which have been circulating, wherein teachers are selling buttermilk, coconuts. They don't know what else to do. It is a shame on the entire education system if this is the outcome of the education, despite having so many agencies looking into quality of education. The private sector in the education need to be well controlled, and some kind of government intervention is needed. Otherwise, the situation is going to go from bad to worse. Okay. Now the ethical question. As faculty members, as the teaching community, especially this question goes to the entire teaching community and the vice chancellors of all the institutions, because I usually talk my mind out and I do not have any inhibition in expressing my views. Are we doing the right thing by promoting students without proper examination? Is this what are we doing the right thing? If the answer is yes, then we can continue. Can we not have an online mode of examination being worked out? If we can have an online mode of teaching, why can't an online mode of examination can be worked out? Instead of just passing the students without examination. Is this the way to go forward? So lack of quality engineer profession. Okay, now you are going to pass a civil engineer without examination. He is going to build a bridge. Fortunately or unfortunately, is employed by some construction company. He builds a bridge, and if that bridge collapses, how many people, if unfortunately there is a loss of life of human beings, who will be held responsible? As a teacher, as we will be held responsible, as a student, will he be responsible? As a nation, will they be responsible? I don't know. So will our nation suffer in long run due to lack of such untrained professionals coming into system? Okay. Okay. At this point, I would like to mention a wonderful quote which I have downloaded from my Facebook wall. At the entrance of a university in South Africa, the following message was posted for contemplation. Destroying a nation does not require use of atomic bombs or use of long-range missiles. It only requires lowering the quality of education and allowing cheating in the examination by the students. Patients die at the hand of such doctors. Now, fortunately in India, in medical education, students are not passed without examination. We should thank God, because in years to come, if we end up going to such doctors who are being passed out without examination, God save us. I think even God cannot save. So patients die at hands of such doctors. Buildings collapse at the hands of such engineers. Money is lost at the hands of such economists and accountants. Humanity dies in hands of such religious scholars. Justice is lost at hands of such judges. Collapse of education is collapse of the nation. I hope we don't go into such situations. We should have full faith in our government, central government, union government, who are trying to bring drastic changes to the education system, and for our better tomorrow. And this education policy has not been touched upon for last 40 to 50 years. And I should thank the present union government for bringing these changes. And we as the citizens, whether we are with the, we should contribute effectively by giving proper suggestion to all the educationalists at your level. Okay. So this online mode of teaching is here to stay. Quality of education delivered is to be improved drastically. That is what we have understood from my around 45 minutes of talk. Robust mechanisms need to be developed for evaluating, especially in the online mode. So this is what I would like to suggest to the policy makers. If you are not able to do offline examination due to some way, there can be a way of doing an online examination. Obviously, the internet connectivity issues will come, and we can find a way to solve it. New policy framework for online teaching, especially for higher and technical education, is needed, and it is being done by the government. I must admit that. Focus on concept understanding rather than remembering. This is very important. People are not understanding concept. They are trying to mug up, vomit in the examination, go to the next semester and done with it. And I appeal to the top institutions and the policy maker to create a policy such that the top institutions such as Indian Institute of Science and IITs can mentor other institutions for their growth, for growth of nation. Recruitment of quality faculty, especially those who have graduated from top institutions, should be encouraged to take teaching and research in India. So what is happening is those who are passing out from IITs are fed up with the Indian education system and they are going abroad. Actually, this was actually raised by many of the honorable member of parliament, many MPs in the parliament across party lines. They are doing BE in Indian Institute of Technology after passing the most difficult competitive exam in the world. They take education under government guidelines and with lot of government subsidy. After passing out from engineering, they go and work for Google or Amazon in United States of America, thereby improving the GDP of USA. I'm not against USA. Please don't get me wrong. I'm not against those students. Okay, are they patriotic towards their country? What has made them to, this is known as the brain drain. These IITs and IISc people, why are they going abroad instead of serving our country in either teaching or research or innovation or whatever? They can come up with startup, so many things they can do. Why is this happening is the question which all of us need to answer. So there should be some kind of policy framework where these students are encouraged, those who graduate from IITs, to serve our country instead of running all the way abroad. Now just compare this with Japan or Germany. Do the students from Germany run to USA and work? Do the students from Japan run to USA and work? I will tell that these are the people who are most patriotic towards their country. They are very proud of their nation. And I'm very sorry to say that Indians who work for USA don't talk well about our country. So an Indian who is basically an Indian working in USA will talk about very greatly about the other country rather than our country. Now, where are we failing? Our primary education is failing because they should get a patriotism to the country in which they are born, the society in which they are born. They should get some kind of patriotism. This is the point I would like to make, and there should be some kind of policy intervention from the government, and we as a teachers should imbibe such patriotism. The money they can earn abroad, they can earn in India as well if they use their skill set for the growth of our nation. Okay, these are some of my suggestions before I conclude my talk. Okay, in finance, we have tangible and intangible assets. Researchers and faculties are intangible assets. They cannot be valued by money. For any educational institutions, in particular, I'm talking about private sector, skilled researchers and faculty are intangible assets and should be respected. And the institutions should go out of the way to retain such faculties and researchers instead of they going away. More focus on research, development, and innovation. I want a Rafale kind of aircraft to be built in India by Hindustan Aeronautical Limited by the engineers who are passing out from India. Is that not possible? So we will be saving 36,000 crores if that much money goes for the primary education. A country which is still having almost I don't know the figures, around 15 to 20% of the population below poverty line. Can we afford a 36,000 crore aircraft? Can we not develop that in India? So our defense need to be strengthened. I'm fully for it. But as in India, we should do make in India, Atmanirbhar. So for that, there should be a focus on real research and development, not paper research and development. Many of the people, there's a craze for getting PhDs nowadays. People have forgotten what is PhD. So there have been many institutions where students pay money and get PhD degrees, or you have pay journals where you pay something and you get some kind of publication which is worth nothing. So if you are going for this kind of research and development, I'm sorry, we are going nowhere. Industry institute interaction to be strengthened. This is very much needed, not only with top institutions, with all the institutions. Very importantly, governance in education and technical education should be transparent and strengthened. More applicable for private institutions where governance issue need to be strengthened, not only on paper. Invest in intellectual talent. Another point, this is also there in the Atal Innovation ranking. Train faculties and students to be Atmanirbhar towards entrepreneurship, which leads to startup and employment opportunities. So faculties and students of engineering institutions should be encouraged to take up startups or start startup under MSME scheme. So in IITs, they have this one. Many of the faculties, they have their own private limited company and their startup, and they are training the pass out student under their startup. This is what IITs are doing. So why can't this be replicated everywhere? Then only your innovation will come. Now, this cannot be done by policy alone. All of us, citizens of our country, should work together for our country to make our country Atmanirbhar and lead the world in science and technology. India has been taking a lead role in science and technology ages back. We should replicate such model and we should be top of the world, and I'm sure we can give leadership to the world in terms of education. Most importantly, education is not a business. Education can generate business and intellectual talent going on, but education can never be considered as a business. It is a service to the society. If this motto is taken by all the institutions, especially in the private sector, education is not considered as a business, they will grow. So I hope all of you will agree with this point. Education can never be a business. I'm sorry about that. So I would like to conclude my talk. Around 15 minutes I have been talking. COVID-19 has impacted education, especially including higher and technical education. We all have understood there's a huge quality difference between the education delivered by top institutions and any other regular institution. Lack of standardization in teaching and learning process is there, especially after this COVID-19. Will it impact our country in long term? It's already impacting. So how far it is impacting? And I hope the new education policy, if implemented in its earnest, it will take care of such things. And top government institutions like Indian Institute of Science, Indian Institute of Science Education Research, IITs, NITs, IIITs, they can take a lead role in mentoring other technical higher education institutions, for which a policy intervention from government will be required. These are my social media profiles. I'm quite active in Facebook, LinkedIn. This is my Quora profile, Twitter and Instagram. Twitter and Instagram, I'm not that much active as Facebook and LinkedIn. You can follow me if you share my similar views. I sincerely would like to thank and acknowledge Professor Bikram Keshori Jaina, Director of CARD, for extending an invitation to me as a speaker. I will thank all the audience who are present here. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Narayan.
Yes.
Let us go for to attend some questions, sir.
Yes.
Sir, the first question is from my side. Classroom teaching
Yes.
is affected due to COVID-19 for 1.5 years. Online education is reachable to only 40% students in our state in Odisha. And I thought all over the India is the same situation. The digital divide affected to most of our students. Do you think community radio can bridge the gap between digital hubs and digital hubs to promote higher education during this time of unprecedented situation?
Actually, this community radio and these things can be used for the primary education. See, if you are going for primary education up to 5th or 6th standard, I think such mechanisms can work. But when you are going for higher education, it is slightly specialized. I think the government on its part have done a lot. If they are anticipated COVID, we could have planned it better. I think in the years to come, many people are the bandwidth problem and other things are going to be solved. Every village is likely to be connected with the internet, with the bandwidth. I do not think it is going to be a problem. In fact, it is going to be an advantage. Nowadays, IITs are offering online master's degree course. So going forward, they may offer an online undergraduate degrees course. So those who could not get into regular mode of IITs can go with that. So the advantage of online teaching is I can connect to some student in Nagaland who is in a very remote location. So we recently in our institution had a speaker from Nagaland, NIT Nagaland, who presented. So he told about his state. So this is how a connection is being developed. This is the one positive after effects of education due to COVID-19. Actually, I covered a little bit negative aspect. There are some positive aspects since COVID is a negative aspects. So we have dealt with the problems that we are facing as my title.
Thank you. So another question is by Milan Jena. So if there are so many challenges before the higher education, are there any opportunities for higher or technical education due to COVID?
See, any problem will also give us opportunities. So when we are addressing the lacunas which are presently available, which were there existing even prior to COVID, in my presentation, it was very amply clear there's a lack of quality. So these challenges were there before COVID also, and COVID-19 has given an opportunity for online education, which were never thought about. So there have been a lot of online training institutions which are coming up, and they are delivering much better quality than the regular institutions. That is why students are leaving the regular institutions and going to institutions which are delivering quality online content. So this is going to be the change. So whenever you deliver quality, whether it is online or offline, you are going to have audience, and you are going to get people for that. They will ready to pay even money if they are getting quality content. Nobody will pay amount if they are getting they don't get quality. People want quality. They want to be empowered. They want skill sets. So whether you are providing that online or offline, people are going to come for that. And definitely there is an opportunity due to COVID because of online education also.
Thank you. So the next question is from Professor Shubham Das. The question is, most of the faculty members in the states are not encouraged by the state government to pursue higher research due to the lack of teaching faculty in various state institutions. Even state governments are not giving attention to their teachers on their teachers' orientations and refresher programs to ensure quality education in their state. Swayam-based UGC MOOC course are very poor standard, as the educators are reading PowerPoint presentations line by lines. How do you address these problems to ensure and maintain the quality standards of higher education, sir?
Yes, a very valid question from Shubham Das. I really thank the Professor Shubham Das for asking such a relevant question. In fact, I would go on to say many of the MOOC courses are of no value. And these are of very poor quality, and there's a craze of certification in this terms of COVID. A very nice point he has raised. People are running behind certificates, and there has been some students who have done 400 MOOC courses. Is it physically possible? Can a person learn 400 courses in 1 year? Can he be? I think even a genius cannot do that. So I do not know. These things will not last for long. So such kind of certification wherein there is no quality ensured is not going to last for long. So whether it is private or government, such courses wherein you should get some kind of takeaways from what you are learning. That is what National Board of Accreditation tells. Unfortunately, the only takeaway is a certificate, and such certificates do not have any value, have absolutely no value. So your point of the state governments not encouraging the faculties to pursue higher education is it is an unfortunate scenario, but I'm sure the new education policy, higher education policy promoted by the union government and which will be adopted by throughout India is likely to address such issue, and there is going to be a focus towards quality. There will be some positivity is what I expect, and I fully sympathize and empathize with Shubham Das, and I fully agree with his points.
Thank you. So the next question is, in case of technical courses, as well as in commerce and management disciplines, students have to do internship with the industry as part of course requirements. How would students are fruitfully able to undergo internship, and academic institutions and industries are closed due to lockdowns? Some industries may reopen in course of time, but would they be able to comply with internship requirements concerned as they are with productivity and sales?
Yes, so actually very good point with internship. The idea about the internship is to train the students in what to say, the skill sets which are required by them to so that they can be employable in the industry. Unfortunately, what has happened that internship has become a business. So there are many firms which offer ready-made internship. So I don't wish to tell. I am in Bangalore. Some of the faculty members joining from Bangalore will tell there are many institutions. You pay them 2,000 rupees, they'll give you internship report, and that has to be submitted. You get the marks. If that is the real motive of internship, we should all hang our heads in shame. Is that was the what I'm telling is government has got very good ideas, but when it comes to implementation, we are messing up in a big way. All of us should stand together and work towards this. This problem is not going to be solved. This is like a cancer spreading. When the cancer spreads, you may need chemotherapy, you may need radiation therapy, you may need surgery. So government is trying to give some mild chemotherapy, but the cancer has spread so deep that is not there. Internship, I fully agree, it is not serving the purpose, and especially during this pandemic, there has been no purposeful internship which is done by especially by the science and the core engineering students. Maybe possible in computer science branches. And why the internship course itself should be there during pandemic, I have no idea, and this is my answer to that.
The last questions.
I think there are few more questions. I think from Chittaranjan Mishra. Most of the state governments are chiefly promoting permission recognition for establishment of higher education institutions. Those are sold just to escape from the pass percentage. There is a competition to increase the pass percentage. I fully agree. I have mentioned that in the talk. Subham Das, we have already answered. And Dr. Shama Prasad, both the questions are thought-provoking and needs in-depth debate. There is a wide gap in the theory and ground reality. I fully agree with him. Okay, yeah, last question. Oh, yeah, you can go ahead.
Sir, the last question is, how can online methods be followed for the conduct of practical classes in disciplines where it's compulsory when students have moved out campus, in absence of which these practical classes, the online condition may fall?
I'll just try to understand how can online methods be followed for conduction. That's what I already mentioned. Not only for practical classes, there are some things where online you cannot do. See, for example, in medical education, I know a little bit, you have human anatomy. And so where you need to understand the, there's a dead body dissection is part of the experiment. So that can't be done online. So online is going to fully fail, especially in engineering like civil engineering. How can they learn online how to build a bridge? That is what is my worry. If such engineers were to build a bridge and that will collapse, if there is a loss of life, as a nation, we are going to fail.
Okay. Thank you so much, Professor Narayan K. Ji. And now I would like to invite Dr. Nupur for the concluding remark of this session. Over to you, Dr. Nupur.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rudra. Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Narayan. Am I clearly audible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, thank you, sir, for being with us and giving a wonderful deliberation about challenges in higher and technical education due to COVID-19. So I think, sir, we all the students, all the faculty members over here have really known the inbuilt realities, the social realities in the educational system that we are undergoing today. As education is not only a necessity, but it's also a dire need for everyone, and it has been affected and sabotaged today in these times. And many of them, as you have said, sir, many of them have not been able to access the educational system because of this lack of online thing or digital thing, which even the teachers are not able to access this. And that also students, they are also not able to find anything with that. And sir, you have very importantly said about the Atmanirbhar Bharat and many other policies and programs that you have said about that those are also playing an important role, but still some of them are not able to address the issues like the NEP. You have said like it has been introduced as a perfect blend of learning and practicing for the entire educational community. But still, sir, this, as you have said, that this will also take time to change. And more importantly, sir, you have said about the very important things that really we all are encountering today, the things that we are facing today, like lack of motivation. Because many of them, many of the students, they do not have motivation to study in the online times, and they sometimes somehow they are not able to access those things because of lack of digital phones, smartphones, because we have to also see the poverty indices over there. So that is also, sir, you have very importantly highlighted, as the people climb trees to afford for education. So education becomes a costly issue today in these times of pandemic. And sir, you have also said about the impacts of this particular higher and technical education due to this COVID-19. There are immediate impact, there are long-term impact, there are short-term impacts, and there are huge medium-term impact also. So you have said it very nicely, very excellently. Like we all are facing this, and rightly, it's a very relevant lecture for all of us, and we all are indebted to you. So thank you so much, sir, for your excellent discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Nufu, for the kind remark on Dr. Narayan's talk. Now we are going to conclude and inviting Professor Dr. Samuel Lima for going for the formal vote of thanks.
Thank you, Rudra. Thank you so much. Thank you all the participants and all the viewers. So on behalf of the participants and organizer of the World Human Science Management Conference, I express my deep sense of gratitude to Dr. Narayan K, Professor and Dean of the Sai Vidya Institute of Technology, Bengaluru. Thank you so much. You have enlightened us on the topic challenges in higher and technical education due to COVID-19. And again, thank you so much and very much, Professor Narayan, for accepting our invitation from your busy schedule and joined us in this global digital platform all the way from Bangalore. And we are really thankful and grateful to you, Dr. Narayan. And also I'm thankful to all the patrons, Madhav Jaiswal, IIM Sambalpur Director, I. Rama Verma, Honorable Vice Chancellor of the Central University of Odisha, and the convener of the program, Professor Chandi Prasad Chanda, and futurist Professor Charudat Panigrahi, Professor Sarath Kumar Palit. And also I'm really thankful to all the supporters and coordinators, technically those who have been for the last couple of days supporting us. Without their support, it wouldn't have been possible, like Mr. Subham Das, Mr. Kamal Prasad Mahanti, Ghamsham Giri, Chinmay Kumar Sahu, Anirudh Jaina from Hyderabad University, and Mrs. and Mr. Priyanka Das and Rudra Narayan Das. And also a special thanks to Dr. Subhash Chandra Badi, Dr. Priyadari Sikar, Dr. Shyam Prasad Misra. And also I'm thankful to all the, also thankful to Dr. Nupur Patnaik from the Central University of Odisha, Koraput. And also I'm thankful to all the students of IIM Sambalpur, Central University of Odisha, and Ravenshaw University students, those who have joined and connected with us in this global digital platform via Zoom meeting, Facebook, and YouTube. And finally, last but the most important, a person who gathered all of us together in this global digital platform. Without him, it wouldn't have been possible. He is none other than Dr. Vikram Kesar Jana, the director of the CARD Odisha. We are really thankful and grateful to you. Thank you all. Really, we are look forward to see you again all. Till then, stay well, stay safe. Bye-bye. Thank you so much. Thank you to all.
Thank you, Dr. Narayan, for having with us.
Thank you.